Good morning, friends. Canada has bet its future on the F-35, but did we choose the wrong fighter for the high Arctic? While stealth is the gold standard, it can't carry the massive missile payload required to defend our northern flank. Is the F-15EX the missile truck we actually need to secure NORAD? In the vast freezing expanse of the north, invisibility might be useless if you run out of firepower. We're pitting the F-35 stealth against the F-15EX's raw speed and unrivaled missile capacity. Discover why this twin-engine powerhouse could be the secret weapon Canada needs for long-range tactical dominance. Modernizing NORAD isn't just about high-tech sensors, it's about logistical endurance and sheer presence. The F-15EX integrates seamlessly with our existing infrastructure while offering a high-speed interceptor alternative that the F-35 simply can't match. We analyze if raw firepower and range now outweigh the tactical advantages of stealth. Welcome back to our channel, where we break down the most important developments in military aviation. Today, we're diving deep into the F-15EX, a fighter that's causing heated debates in defense circles. The story begins in the far north, a region most people rarely think about, but one that has quietly become one of the most strategically important airspaces on Earth. Over the past year, military analysts have been watching a noticeable shift in activity across the Arctic. Long-range cruise missile exercises, extended bomber patrols, and new hypersonic weapon tests are appearing more frequently in areas uncomfortably close to North American air defense zones. For decades, the Arctic served mainly as a buffer, a frozen expanse separating major powers. Today, it is increasingly becoming a potential pathway. For Canada and the United States, that pathway is guarded by the Joint Air Defense Network known as North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. NORAD's mission has always been straightforward in theory: detect threats early, scramble interceptors, and prevent hostile aircraft or missiles from reaching North American airspace. But the geography of the Arctic complicates everything. Distances in the high north are enormous, airbases are sparse. Radar coverage is improving, but response times remain a critical challenge. When a long-range bomber or cruise missile carrier approaches the outer edge of the defense perimeter, intercept aircraft may need to travel thousands of kilometers across remote territory just to make visual contact. In some scenarios, the window to respond is measured in minutes. That is where the traditional scramble model begins to show its age. During the Cold War, scrambling fighters to intercept approaching bombers was a well-practiced routine. Today, however, potential threats move faster, travel farther, and often launch standoff weapons long before they ever approach national airspace. Hypersonic glide vehicles and long-range cruise missiles complicate that timeline even further. And this is where the debate around stealth aircraft starts to become more complicated. Stealth fighters like the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II are designed primarily to penetrate defended airspace without being detected. They excel in environments where avoiding radar is critical to survival. But Arctic air defense is a very different type of mission. In many cases, the objective is not to hide, it is to be seen. Intercepting a non-stealth bomber, escorting it away from North American airspace, and signaling clear defensive capability are all part of what military planners call visible deterrence. The aircraft approaching the continent already knows it has been detected. The mission is to reach it quickly, carry enough weapons to respond if necessary, and maintain control of the situation across massive distances. That raises a strategic question that defense planners are now openly discussing. If the mission over the Arctic is speed, range, and payload rather than stealth penetration, does the traditional stealth-first approach fully solve the problem? Or does North America need an aircraft optimized for long-distance interception and overwhelming firepower? And that question leads directly to a fighter that was never originally designed to be stealthy at all, but may be uniquely suited for the Arctic's vast air defense mission, the Boeing F-15 Eagle II. Once the Arctic interception problem is understood, the next question becomes unavoidable. What kind of aircraft is actually best suited to solve it? For years, modern air power discussions have revolved around stealth. Fifth-generation fighters are often described as the future of warfare, able to slip through enemy radar networks like ghosts. And in many combat environments, that advantage is decisive. But Arctic air defense introduces a very different set of priorities. When a long-range bomber or missile carrier appears near the outer edge of North American airspace, The mission is not to quietly penetrate enemy territory. The mission is to arrive quickly, establish control, and carry enough firepower to respond immediately if the situation escalates. And this is where the comparison between two very different fighters becomes interesting. On one side is the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II, a highly advanced stealth aircraft designed to avoid detection and strike with precision. Its internal weapons bays allow it to carry missiles while preserving its low radar signature. But those internal bays also create a natural limitation. In stealth configuration, the F-35 can carry only a limited number of missiles internally, before additional weapons must be mounted externally, which reduces its stealth advantage. On the other side is a completely different philosophy of air combat. The Boeing F-15EX Eagle II was built around raw capacity. Instead of hiding its weapons, it carries them openly, and in enormous numbers. With a payload capacity approaching 29,500 pounds, the aircraft can carry up to 22 air-to-air missiles in certain configurations. That kind of loadout turns the aircraft into what military planners often call a missile truck. In practical terms, that means a single fighter could potentially engage multiple incoming targets without immediately needing support from additional aircraft. But survivability in modern air combat is not only about how many weapons an aircraft can carry. The real question is how well it can detect threats and avoid being targeted in the first place. This is where the Eagle II introduces something new. The aircraft is equipped with the Eagle Passive Active Warning Survivability System, a sophisticated electronic warfare suite designed to detect radar signals, analyze threats, and respond with digital countermeasures in real time. Instead of relying purely on physical stealth shaping, the system creates what some analysts describe as a dynamic electronic shield, confusing enemy sensors, jamming tracking systems, and making the aircraft significantly harder to target. It represents a different philosophy of survivability, not invisibility, but awareness and electronic dominance. And then there is the factor that matters enormously over the Arctic: speed and altitude. Eagle II is capable of flying faster and higher than many modern multi-role fighters. Those advantages may seem minor on paper, but over the vast distances of the high north, they become strategically important. When an interceptor needs to close hundreds of kilometers quickly, every minute saved in transit increases the chance of intercepting a potential threat before it can launch standoff weapons. In other words, in the most remote airspace on the planet, the ability to reach the target first can be just as important as avoiding detection. And that leads to a question that defense planners in both Ottawa and Washington are quietly beginning to consider. In an environment defined by distance, speed, and large incoming threats, could a heavily armed interceptor actually provide something stealth aircraft cannot? Because if the Arctic becomes the next frontier of great power competition, the aircraft best suited for that mission may not be the quietest fighter in the sky. It may be the one carrying the most missiles. Beyond performance and weapons, there is another factor that rarely makes headlines, but often determines which aircraft a country can realistically operate: logistics. Modern fighter jets are not just combat machines. They are entire ecosystems of maintenance, training, spare parts, and operational infrastructure. For Canada, that reality is especially important because its Air Force must operate across enormous distances while maintaining a limited number of bases in the north. For decades, the backbone of Canadian air defense has been the McDonnell Douglas CF-18 Hornet. Aircraft has protected Canadian airspace since the 1980s and has built an entire generation of technicians, engineers, and pilots around its maintenance systems. This is where the logistical conversation around the Boeing F-15EX Eagle II becomes particularly interesting. Unlike some newer stealth platforms that require entirely new maintenance environments, the F-15EX was deliberately designed with operational continuity in mind. Many of its servicing procedures, ground equipment requirements, and maintenance workflows resemble systems already familiar to crews who have spent years working on legacy fighters. That means the transition process could potentially be faster, with less downtime during the shift from older aircraft to a modern fleet. In a country where remote bases must remain operational year-round, shorter transition periods can translate directly into stronger air defense readiness. Another practical factor is reliability. Canada's Arctic coastline stretches roughly 4,000 miles, covering some of the harshest operating environments on the planet. Temperatures can plunge far below freezing, emergency landing options are limited, and search and rescue distances can be enormous. In that environment, engine redundancy becomes more than a technical detail. Twin-engine aircraft like the F-15EX offer an additional layer of safety during long patrols over remote territory. If one engine fails during a mission over the Arctic Ocean, the aircraft can still potentially return to base on the second engine. Single-engine fighters are highly reliable in modern aviation, but over vast and sparsely populated terrain, the margin for error becomes smaller. For pilots tasked with flying thousands of kilometers from the nearest runway, that difference matters. Then there is the financial reality. Canada, like many Western countries, is balancing military modernization against economic pressure. Inflation, rising procurement costs, and expanding defense commitments are forcing governments to evaluate not just how much aircraft costs to purchase, but how expensive they are to operate over decades of service. One of the most closely watched metrics in that discussion is cost per flying hour. Every training sortie, patrol mission, and interception adds to the total life cycle cost of a fighter fleet. When multiplied across hundreds or thousands of annual flight hours, even relatively small cost differences can add up to billions over time. That is why defense planners increasingly evaluate aircraft not only by their capabilities, but by how efficiently they can remain airborne. For Canada, the question becomes strategic rather than purely technical. Which aircraft allows the country to maintain continuous northern patrols, rapid interception capability, and long-term sustainability without overwhelming the defense budget? Because in the end, the aircraft that best protects Canadian airspace may not simply be the most advanced fighter available. It may be the one that Canada can operate reliably, affordably, and continuously across the vast skies of the Arctic.
Air defense in the 21st century is no longer just about aircraft speed or missile range. The real transformation is happening in something less visible but far more powerful: the digital network that connects everything together. For North America, that network is built around the command structure of North American Aerospace Defense Command. For decades, NORAD has relied on a chain of radar stations across the Arctic known as the North Warning System. But today, that system is undergoing one of the most significant upgrades since the Cold War. Modern surveillance now combines ground-based radar with satellite tracking, airborne sensors, and real-time data fusion. Instead of isolated radar stations reporting individual contacts, the new architecture creates a continuously updated picture of northern airspace, tracking aircraft, cruise missiles, and potentially even hypersonic vehicles moving across the polar region. In that environment, a fighter aircraft becomes more than just a weapon platform. It becomes a node in a digital combat network. This is where the Boeing F-15EX Eagle II fits into the modernization discussion. The aircraft was designed with an open architecture mission system that allows it to connect directly into modern command networks, sharing sensor data, threat information, and targeting updates in real time. Because of its large payload capacity and powerful onboard processing systems, the aircraft can operate as a high-capacity response platform once threats are identified by the wider network. But perhaps the most interesting concept emerging from NORAD planning circles is what analysts often describe as a high-low mix. In this model, stealth aircraft such as the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II operate closer to potential threats, using their advanced sensors and low observability to detect targets early and transmit data back into the network. Meanwhile, larger fighters with greater missile capacity remain positioned farther back, ready to respond once the target has been identified and tracked. Result is a layered system where stealth aircraft act as forward sensors, while heavily armed fighters deliver the kinetic punch. For NORAD, this approach could significantly increase interception capacity without requiring every aircraft in the fleet to carry the same design priorities. Instead of choosing between stealth and payload, the system allows each aircraft type to perform the role it performs best. And that network does not stop at the atmosphere. In recent years, the United States has dramatically expanded its space-based military infrastructure through organizations such as the United States Space Force. Satellites capable of detecting missile launches, tracking objects across vast distances, and relaying targeting data are becoming a central part of the North American defense architecture. When those space-based sensors are combined with Arctic radar stations and network-connected aircraft, the result begins to resemble something closer to a continuous surveillance shield over the Northern Hemisphere. For Canada, participation in that system means more than simply purchasing new aircraft. It means ensuring that its fighters can plug directly into the evolving NORAD digital backbone, receiving information instantly and responding just as quickly. Because the future of Arctic defense may depend not just on how fast an interceptor can fly, but on how seamlessly it can connect to the entire defense network watching the skies above the North.
As the debate over stealth, payload, and Arctic interception continues, one final question remains. What will the future Canadian flight line actually look like? For years, fighter procurement discussions often revolved around choosing a single platform, a clear winner that would define the Air Force for decades. But modern defense planning is increasingly moving in a different direction. Instead of betting everything on one aircraft, some analysts argue that Canada could benefit from a split fleet approach. Under this concept, stealth aircraft such as the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II would handle missions where advanced sensors and low observability are critical: intelligence gathering, early detection, and operations in highly contested environments. At the same time, a heavy interceptor like the Boeing F-15EX Eagle II could provide the other half of the equation: long-range patrol, large missile capacity, and rapid response interception across the Arctic. This kind of high-low structure would allow Canada to avoid putting its entire defense strategy into a single technological basket. If future threats evolve in unexpected ways, whether through hypersonic weapons, long-range bombers, or new electronic warfare systems, a diversified fleet could offer more flexibility. There is also the question of longevity. One of the most striking features of the F-15EX design is its 20,000-hour airframe life. That is significantly longer than many previous fighter generations. For Canada, a country that must stretch its defense investments across vast geography and long timelines, that durability could translate into something extremely valuable: long-term stability. An aircraft capable of serving reliably for decades could remain a cornerstone of Arctic air defense well into the 2040s and potentially beyond 2050. In a strategic environment where global power competition is intensifying, maintaining a dependable interceptor fleet may become just as important as acquiring the newest technologies. But ultimately, the deeper question goes beyond aircraft models and procurement strategies. What truly deters potential threats in the Arctic? Is it the ability to remain invisible, or the ability to respond with overwhelming force the moment a threat appears? In an era where long-range missiles, strategic bombers, and hypersonic systems are reshaping military planning, many defense experts believe the answer may lie in mass firepower combined with networked awareness: aircraft that can see threats early, arrive quickly, and carry enough weapons to control the situation immediately. And if that becomes the defining requirement for Arctic defense, then the so-called missile truck philosophy may have a larger role to play than many expected. Whether Canada ultimately chooses a single advanced fighter or a balanced mix of capabilities, one thing is becoming clear: the future of North American air defense will be shaped not just by stealth, but by how effectively countries can defend the vast skies of the Arctic. If you enjoyed this analysis and want more deep dives into global defense technology, Arctic security, and military aviation strategy, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.